You book a ticket, sign papers, or accept an offer in a single impulse, and the world turns upside down. It's a terrifying and clear pain. The past pulls while the new life is not yet formed. I'll show you where exactly the turning point occurs and how not to miss it. A typical morning routine: a cup of coffee, a job vacancy notification, confirmation of a trip reservation, a signed document. At this moment, it seems like nothing special happened. But this is where everything is decided. You remember the moments before the decision not so much because it was grand, but because afterward, you can never return to the previous simplicity. This confused anticipation. It's something you can recognize, and it's not magic, but the skills of observation and decision-making. Often, fear and habit act as brakes. The emerging window of opportunity slips by because a voice of doubt seems to turn on inside. I'll think about it more. Maybe later. This pause is the place where life stays old or becomes new. And this is why it's important. Those little keyboard presses, those signatures, and those solitary clicks of buy often turn out to be the beginning of a big change. Hence flows a simple thought, which is not heard in motivational phrases. Change comes not only from big decisions, it lives in a mind that can notice the impulse and accept it. By the end of the video, it will be clearer where exactly the pivotal moment hides and what to do with it. You will gain not philosophy, but practical understanding. How to distinguish empty anxiety from a signal, where you should not wait for ideal conditions, and how to ensure that one small step does not turn into a missed opportunity. In the following video, we will analyze specific signs and a simple scheme that helps to act in the moment. In the morning, you wake up feeling like you are stuck in a loop, and by evening, you find that a random email or a short letter has changed your trajectory for months to come. This vague anxiety is the reason many miss their chance. Opportunities come in simple forms, while fatigue and habit read them as distractions. That is why this topic is particularly important now. The world has accelerated, windows of opportunity are shorter, and the cost of indecision has increased. What you will gain in these minutes: clarity on why an ordinary episode can become the beginning of a new life, and a working model that will help you capture and realize these episodes. Not a promise of instant transformation, but a real guide on how to stop missing what previous decisions have already sown. The role map is simple and conversational. First, an explanation of the mechanics, then a clear application scheme, and a short practice that can be used immediately after viewing. The context of importance. Now is not the time to wait for the best hour. The competitive environment and personal fatigue make the window of opportunity thinner. You might postpone due to fear or look for excuses in the lack of resources. But the fact remains, many significant changes are chains of small, almost imperceptible actions. A new thesis that will be presented later, and was not in the hook. It is not the event itself that changes the trajectory, but how it is captured and turned into the next step. In other words, changes are not solidified by emotions, but by intention and subsequent actions. Why this works. When a decision is fixed, whether by signature, ticket, or accepted offer, it creates a reference point for subsequent steps. Without fixation, the energy of opportunity is dissipated by doubt, and the chance slips away. Further in the video, there will be examples of such reference points, criteria for quick recognition, and a simple algorithm that will allow you to act, even if there is fear inside. This part will provide an understanding of why it is important to learn to notice and solidify moments, because that is how small decisions turn into significant changes. There is a simple mechanism that turns a minor episode, a ticket, a signature, a sent message, into the beginning of a great story. It is not mystical. It is built on 3 real pillars: attention, fixation, and inertia. In the moment, a signal appears, a notable event or opportunity. If attention does not capture it, the signal will go unnoticed. If there is attention, then fixation decides. You turn a thought into a fact, and then inertia is set in motion, a sequence of actions that creates a new future. Why does this happen? The brain conserves energy and tends to maintain the status quo. News, notifications, meetings, all of this competes with routine for attention resources. We prioritize familiar patterns because executing them requires less effort. But as soon as you perform an external act of fixation, press a button, sign a document, buy a ticket, the system starts to allocate resources differently. The external act serves as an anchor. It translates uncertainty into specificity and organizes attention not as a background, but as direction. This is not magic. It is a change in the informational field around you. Now events are arranged towards a new trajectory. A typical mistake that almost everyone makes is confusing signal with anxiety. Inside, a voice arises. I'll think about it more. Not now. Maybe this is a mistake. These thoughts seem like common sense, but more often serve as a filter for returning to the familiar. The mistake is not in your doubt, but in the fact that doubt automatically translates into passivity. Passivity is the main trap. It spreads the opportunity over time, and by the moment stress dissipates, the external chance has already dried up. The same happens when a person evaluates risk solely based on the size of change. If the step seems disproportionate, people postpone it, although disproportion is often a result of misjudging the starting threshold. A new perspective, what to look at in the moment to understand whether it is really a chance, and not just a flash of anxiety. Look not at the emotion, but at the consequences of fixation. If one small act translates several things from uncertainty to clarity, this is a sign. Example, a short email with an offer. Receiving the email itself does not change anything yet. But if you consider the possibility of accepting it, and at the same time one click or signature automatically reveals further steps, relocation, a new salary, a new circle of acquaintances, then the email serves as an anchor point. Another example, a spontaneous decision to buy a ticket to another city. The ticket itself does not solve problems, but it creates a time frame, changes the schedule, and forces you to restructure priorities around the new date. 2 examples that help to feel the mechanics without names. The first is a composite image. A person who has been preparing to start a sport, study, or project for years. One day, he finds a free minute in the morning and enrolls in the first lesson. Not because he has a perfect plan, but because enrollment is an external act of fixation. This act creates a series of subsequent steps. A confirmation email arrives. A habit of setting aside time appears. The eternal plan on paper disappears. The second is an inner monologue at the moment of making a small risk. What if it doesn't go well? I will lose time, money, comfort. And immediately the next thought. But if I don't do anything, in a year, I will regret not having checked. This rearrangement of arguments is part of how fixation changes perspective. When the decision is made, regret over inaction works in the opposite direction. A turnaround that gives more control. Stop waiting for the grand moment and start recognizing functional anchor points. This is not an instruction, do this. It is a change in perception. Learning to see which small acts truly translate uncertainty into movement. The result is obvious. One formalized step is more likely to trigger a chain reaction than 1,000 good intentions. And the flip side, without fixation, even a strong emotional impulse dissipates and leaves only a memory of regret. And one more nuance. The scale of the effect does not depend on the magnitude of the step, but on its coupling with the surrounding environment. If the act easily integrates into the next structure of actions, it is more effective. This explains why some small things change everything, while large plans sink into the air. Perception of the moment can be enhanced not to constantly jump into the new, but to learn to distinguish empty anxiety from the signal that needs to be formalized and used as an anchor point for the next step. The main principle is simple. An external act of fixation turns possibility into a reference point. Without this, the act remains a thought, vague and fraught with anxiety. How this looks in real life. You are sitting at a table, drinking coffee, seeing a brief letter with an offer or a notification about a good flight. The voice inside suggests delaying the decision. I will think about it. Maybe later. I need to check. If you respond with internal analysis and postpone, the chance dissipates into a stream of thoughts. If you perform an external act, click accept, hit buy, or send a short reply, the world around you will begin to transform. Dates will appear in the calendar. Confirmation emails will arrive. Topics for conversations will become more obvious and necessary. Small decisions will become clearer. Illustration. Imagine that in the morning you received a letter with an offer for a new job. You are considering the terms, recalling the risks, mentally compiling a list of what-ifs. Instead of delaying, you decide on one specific external step. Send a reply saying, I am ready to discuss the details at your convenience. This simple act triggers a series of events. The recruiter writes a meeting is scheduled. You prepare and adjust your schedule. You did not make a large leap immediately, but you performed an external gesture that removes uncertainty and shifts the situation from the status of wants to the status of work. In a few days, the actual routine will change, specific decisions will arise, and new opportunities for maneuvering will present themselves. An action you can take today. Send a reply to one letter or message that has long awaited a decision. Do not ponder the perfect wording. Write simply and clearly. Your reply does not have to solve everything on its own. It is needed to shift the state of affairs from uncertainty into process. Once the external act is done, the next steps become clearer. Timelines, tasks, and necessary negotiations emerge. This is a minimal but qualitative change. Instead of endless thinking, a real trajectory of development appears. Changes often come not as loud episodes, but as a result of small acts that turn thought into fact. 3 things are important. To notice the signal in an ordinary day, to distinguish between anxiety and functional signals, and to formalize decisions through external actions. The first thought, eyes get used to the background, so the signal may seem trivial. The second, doubt is not always a sign of risk. Often it is a mechanism for returning to habit. The third, formalization creates inertia, and it is this inertia that makes steps real. This is not a romantic metaphor, but a working logic. When an action is fixed externally, the system around you starts to rebuild itself, and opportunities take shape. If you do not learn to use this, even strong impulses will remain in memory as regrets and what-ifs. However, if you learn to notice and formalize such moments, life stops being a series of disconnected desires. It forms into trajectories. Observation is important, not for self-observation, but to turn small events into supports for the next step. Accurate observation. The most important points typically do not shout. They are disguised as routine. The ability to distinguish between anxiety and signal boils down to one simple criterion. If one external act clarifies several things, that is a signal. This observation is more useful than motivational slogans because it works with real behavior, not mood. A small final observation. A new life begins at the moment when what is inside takes external form. If this video was useful to you, subscribe so you don't miss the next day.